Warm welcome, everyone, to the Asian Impact webinar. My name is Christina Peck, Principal Counsel from ADB's Office of the General Counsel. And I'm here with my colleague, Rolando Avendano. He's an economist from the ADB's Economic Research and Development Impact Department, and we will be your co-moderators. So we are delighted to have you join us for this important discussion on how a comprehensive long-term approach to investment policy can unlock the potential of foreign direct investment in Asia and the Pacific. So today we will take a closer look at Uzbekistan's roadmap for sustainable investment policy reforms as a case study and draw lessons for other Asian economies seeking to strengthen their investment climate. So as to the structure of the webinar, we will start with a presentation by Mr. Faris Al-Hussami. He's the head of FDI Qualities and Impact at OECD's Investment Division. Basically, Faris led the team behind Uzbekistan Investment Policy Review in close cooperation with the government of Uzbekistan, who took a whole of the government approach by engaging through an interministerial task force in conducting the investment policy review. And furthermore, OECD and the government of Uzbekistan partnered with ADB and the EU to make the review possible. So after Faris's presentation, we will go into panel discussions with a very dynamic group of speakers representing diverse perspectives. And then after that, we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. So please type in your questions in the chat box for later. So Faris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Rolando. Do you hear me and see the presentation?
Yes, I can see that.
Great. Well, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to you, to all panelists and participants. It's my great pleasure to present the key findings and policy recommendations from the roadmap for sustainable investment policy reforms in Uzbekistan. As you mentioned, Christina, this roadmap developed jointly by the OECD, Uzbekistan's Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade, the Asian Development Bank, offers sort of strategic sequenced advice on reforms that can have the greatest impact on private investment and sustainable development. It also supports Uzbekistan's ambition to advance the green and digital transition, both key priorities of the government, but also regional integrations through trade and investment of Uzbekistan. And here I want to congratulate also the ADB team on the chapter they have produced on the trade investment nexus in the context of this roadmap. Let me express OECD's appreciation to the government of Uzbekistan. Very nice to see Aleksey Sim, a true champion of this roadmap, and for the excellent cooperation through this process. And of course, to the ADB, the EU, and Switzerland for their generous support, and the ADB also, of course, for the strategic and analytical contribution. Those that are familiar with Uzbekistan, they are familiar that since 2017, more or less, Uzbekistan has undertaken wide-ranging reforms that have truly modernized the economy and significantly improved the business climate. In just a few years, the country has restructured its entire investment legal framework, adopted new laws on investment activities, PPPs, and special economic zones. Now, many of these laws are being revised again to align with evolving policy needs and, of course, the ongoing WTO accession of Uzbekistan. A new draft investment law, or now we understand investment code, has the potential to clarify further some of the barriers affecting foreign investors and further modernize the legal environment. Uzbekistan has also taken important steps to promote responsible business conduct. Although it is a new topic for the government, we have seen impressive willingness to go into that direction. And responsible business conduct is really critical for sustainable growth and also integration into global value chains, especially as we talk about Uzbekistan being an exporter to markets such as the European Union. Now, of course, despite impressive reform trajectory, and as it is the case for many countries, there are challenges that remain. While investment accounts for about one-third of GDP, and which is actually higher than in many other economies, much of it is still public rather than private. And the stock of foreign direct investment remains relatively small, signaling substantial room for FDI to contribute more to growth and to the economic development in Uzbekistan. Now, FDI going to the green and digital transition, here it's shown on the figure on the right, has been actually quite important in Uzbekistan, especially in green FDI or in the renewable energy sector. But digital investment, while growing recently, remains modest. So all of this raises a question: what is holding back greater inflows of quality FDIs that can create good jobs, support export diversification, strengthen innovation, and drive digital transformation? And this roadmap has identified, here I will present three overarching priorities. In the report, you will have four, but for the sake of the presentation, I combined two priorities in one. So we identify three overarching priorities to address these challenges. The first priority is about enhancing market openness and regulatory transparency to boost competition and private sector dynamism. A substantial amount has already been done, but several further reforms can make a meaningful difference. One that we have observed is about stabilizing the regulatory environment, reducing the frequency of legislative changes, and improving regulatory impact assessment will help ensure that new laws are necessary, implementable, and predictable. Today, legislative overproduction, sometimes maybe unclear mandates, and a reliance on secondary legislation, so executive orders, for instance, may create fragmentation and uncertainty. And this is even more challenging in the world we live in, where uncertainty is really very costly for foreign investors. Another recommendation is about reviewing foreign equity limits and discriminatory minimum capital requirements in key sectors, in particular key services sector. Open and competitive service market can have positive spillovers also for downstream manufacturing activities and consumers. And that's what the figure here shows. It shows the OECD FDI regulatory restrictiveness index for Uzbekistan in comparison to other countries and region. And we see that for Uzbekistan, although not as high as in some other countries, there is potential room to rethink some of the barriers in place. And related to these restrictions on FDI, what we also recommend is to consolidate these FDI restrictions through a negative list approach in upcoming bylaws. This would provide the transparency that is much needed for investors and would also allow for a flexibility to adjust these restrictions as circumstances evolve, meaning that you may not need to have this in the law itself, but in a bylaw, so that you can adjust it like as needed in the future. Strengthening the judiciary for commercial disputes while expanding mediation and arbitration mechanisms to enhance legal predictability is another recommendation on this front. And of course, ensuring a level playing field for SOEs and other companies by removing SOEs preferential access to land, finance, and incentives, and by improving SOE governance and transparency. We, of course, know and understand that Uzbekistan has made huge progress on this front. The report provides some recommendation to go further in that direction. The second priority is about promoting responsible business conduct to advance sustainability goals. So, as I mentioned earlier on, and of course, we are in continuous discussion with Mr. Aleksey Sim and the Uzbek government. We know how much responsible business conduct is now a very high level priority for the government. So, Uzbekistan has shown strong political commitment on this front going forward to help the government go further in more practical terms. We recommend coordinating this responsible business conduct efforts across government while engaging business, civil society, trade unions. A national action plan on business and human rights could provide a robust framework to guide and monitor such progress. Also, raising awareness is extremely important in the case of responsible business conduct, as well as building capacity among businesses, either foreign or domestic. And here, Uzbekistan could leverage recent tools such as the new national SME strategy that actually refers to responsible business conduct. Supporting compliance with labor, human rights, environmental standards, including through effective inspections and more attention to social aspect in impact assessment. And last but not least, clarifying and strengthening responsible business conduct expectations for SOEs, integrating potentially ESG risk management and embedding responsible business conduct consideration into green and sustainable procurement. So the third priority is focusing on improving investment promotion and facilitation, upgrading incentives governance, and strengthening FDI in green, digital, and export-oriented sectors. And here, key reforms in the roadmap include clarifying institutional mandates across government. Responsibilities for investment promotion and facilitation remain sometimes fragmented in Uzbekistan, although we observe this in many other countries too. Here, improved coordination, reduced staff turnover, and a unified investment promotion strategy with clear key performance indicators, KPIs, would help strengthen the national efforts and send a strong signal to global investors on where Uzbekistan would like to go in terms of investment plans. Enhancing cooperation between promotion bodies, notably between the Uzbek Investment Promotion Agency and, for instance, the IT Park, to better attract and service investor in emerging sectors like digital and high tech. And then we have an important recommendation on rebalancing the tax incentive system, where Uzbekistan could rely more on what we call expenditure-based tax incentive instead of income-based tax incentives, such as tax holidays that are also often offered in areas like special economic zones. And this is what the figure here shows, also maybe not very clear, is that more than half of the tax incentive provided in Uzbekistan are income-based, so closer to tax holiday type and not expenditure-based, which means tax credits or allowances that are more efficient, can be better targeted, and less affected by also global initiatives such as the global minimum tax. Here in the report, we offer international examples from other countries. For instance, Thailand's R&D tax credit and grant illustrates the effectiveness of such approach, and here participant of course can go to the report to learn more about this. But let me also commend the Foreign Investors Council initiative, and here we have Mr. Aziz Gafurov to actually explore with businesses and the government this shift toward expenditure-based incentives. We are very happy to also contributing to some of the working group of the Foreign Investor Council in that area. And finally, but very importantly, strengthening the trade investment nexus. So here again, this is the recommendation and chapter covered by ADB. It has a lot of very important recommendations that I invite all participants to go and see with very interesting data. Here we have just this as also for others about having potentially a single window system for cross-border investment procedure aligned with the WTO trade facilitation agreement, which would reduce administrative burdens and improve transparency. And here we are also aware of the effort of the Ministry of Investment, the Foreign Investor Councils, and other partners in improving that. So these are the three priorities of the roadmap, and they are, as I was mentioning, reinforced by the underlying analytical work and by peer country examples from across OECD and developing economies that I invite you to go and explore. But let me finish by saying that this roadmap, you may have opened the document and you saw that it's on nearly 400 pages report, is way more than just a set of recommendation. And this is truly where the partnership with the Asian Development Bank and the Uzbek government was probably most effective. Let me just highlight that in the context of this roadmap, we could, for instance, provide very targeted advice on the ongoing revision of the investment legislative framework. So really going beyond just the recommendation to already being into the implementation side. And the preparation of such report involved extensive dialogue also with the OECD Investment Committee and its member. And from the OECD side, it has strengthened cooperation between Uzbekistan and OECD. And of course, what matters now is implementation. Reforms need to be sequenced, coherent, and supported across government. And in that effort, Uzbekistan can count on the OECD's ongoing partnership. But I'm sure, and maybe I'm speaking on behalf of the Asian Development Bank here, but I'm sure that the ADB would also fully agree. So yeah, let me underline again the value of this collaboration with the ADB, combining OECD and ADB tools and expertise has proven to be quite a successful recipe, at least from our point of view. And yeah, we hope to continue this partnership with Uzbekistan and the ADB, and to expand it also potentially to other countries in Asia. So I will stop here, and of course, happy to respond to any questions you may have. And also, I look forward to hearing from the expert and the panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Fares, for setting the scene and for presenting a very insightful overview of the report. Now that we've heard the key elements of this Uzbekistan roadmap for sustainable investment, we will move to the panel discussion and hear from our speakers. We have an amazing group of experts today. Each of them has participated throughout the process, so we are really glad that they could participate. So let me introduce first Mrs. Ana Novic, who is the head of the investment division at the OECD. Mr. Aleksey Sim, head of strategic development and analysis department at the Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade of Uzbekistan. Mr. Aziz Gafurov, the head of the Foreign Investment Council under the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and Mr. Enrico Pinali, who is the regional head of private sector development in Asian Development Bank. So each of them has very insightful thoughts about this review, its implications, and we will move now to the discussion with some questions for them. Over to you, Christina.
Many thanks, Rolando. So now we'd like to invite Anna to the virtual screen. So we'll start. Hi, Anna. It's very good to see you again. So perhaps we could start with you. You head up OECD's investment division that leads these investment policy reviews. And as we heard from Fares, examines a broad range of issues affecting investment, from legal frameworks to investment promotion and facilitation, competition, taxation, corporate governance, among other areas. So in your experience, what do you see as the main value of countries conducting these comprehensive investment policy reviews?
Hello, good morning, Christina and Rolando, and it's a pleasure to see you again. And let me start by thank you. Thank you, but also ADB for this financial, strategic, and analytical support that has been very instrumental to do this joint review that is the base of the discussions today. Let me answer your question from our experience, and we think that the value of the OECD investment policy review is that they help to navigate countries in this complex world that we are living and that we have been living in terms that they need to attract more investment, but also they need to make this investment more impactful in their economies. And sometimes also they need to care about other safe or other security, resilience issue. This is something a little more new. And in this way, I would say that it's more complex to have a good climate for investment, but because it's not just liberalizing or one-stop shop, you need to have a kind of a more broader ecosystem that includes transparency, competition, tax skills. We were kind of seeing in this presentation, supplier linkages. And I think that this is exactly where the OECD tried to put some value added, because in a way our approach is this policy framework of investment and then the equality framework that are the basic for doing these investment reviews, look across all the investment climate. And that means that we examine, and this is something that Faris just presented part of this review, we examine not only the investment part, but also tax, RBC, responsible business conduct, how investment link with other national and subnational priorities. And because it's true that a good investment climate means a multidimensional, it requires openness, but also predictability, integrity, and all these things. And here, let me thank Aleksey Sim, who is speaking in this panel, and it was our counterpart, and also the team of Uzbeks, because I think that this and the Minister of Investment, because they truly champion this cooperation. And this is very important. I think that the mix of ADB, us with this framework and these champions from Uzbek, the way that you engage in this review is very, very important, because it's not just to have a good recommendation. The issue is that to have the willing to implement this reform. And in that we have other experience with other countries. And let me just put some example here. Vietnam used this investment policy review as a particular, and the later the equality review that we have just finished, to reduce investment restrictions and strengthen a coordination across province. That I think that this was very important, and they make Vietnam a little more open and attractive than already they are, but thanks to this kind of linkages. In the Philippines, we also achieved major reform in terms of some liberalization that they were kind of doing and modernizing their investment incentive schemes. And now we are maybe engaging in a second review. They are asking for that. We are trying to see. But we also work with Thailand, Indonesia, and others. And the most important thing is that you use this review to make the reform that you want. And I think that this Uzbekistan is a super example, because I think that they are using this review to inform this draft in the new legislation. Our input with ADB are improved for improving transparency, investor protection, but also I think that this engagement of Uzbekistan is super, super key for having a good reform. And I would say that the value for government is that this review tried to be really an honest diagnostic on international benchmarking and concrete sequence recommendation. We're not a consultant that satisfy what the government wants to see. And sometimes the governments are not like in a way that, oh, okay, this reform, but I think that this is something valid, that is a true benchmark definition. Also, it's important for investors because they have more clarity of what is going on there, and also what are the reforms that the government wants to do. That means that, just to summarize, the core value of these reforms, that they are comprehensive. They help countries to build a better climate for investment, but it requires this kind of buy-in and compromise that, for example, in this case, Uzbekistan has.
Many thanks for highlighting a lot of the successful ingredients that made Uzbekistan successful, also the value for other countries. So I'll pass the floor to my colleague Rolando.
Thank you. Aleksey, the roadmap sets a very clear and ambitious vision for where Uzbekistan wants to go in terms of investment policy, how to maximize these impacts of international investment for development. So going back to also Anna's point, what is the government strategy and the vision for the implementation of these policy reforms?
Thank you, Rolanda. And first of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the teams at the OECD, Faris, Anna, and Alessandra, and the whole OECD team, and the ADB team, Christina, Rolanda, and Pramila. You have done truly remarkable work. And this report is historic for us. It marks a new era and reform in Uzbekistan. And any real strategy must answer three simple questions: and where are we now, and where do we want to go, and most importantly, how do we get there? And this report gives us a clear picture. It fixes where we are now. It gives us an honest diagnostic of our current investment climate, and it also clearly defines where we want to go towards sustainable, high-quality investment. But the key question is how we get there, and that is a question of implementation. And our strategy for implementation rests on two main pillars. And the first one is the unwavering support of our President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Without his political will, without his direct engagement, these reforms would simply not happen. And he's the main driver. And the second one is about the people. It's about involving our stakeholders. You see, the reforms in the roadmap cannot be implemented by the ministry alone. And if we want to succeed, we need the Ministry of Justice, we need the Ministry of Economy and Finance, we need other ministries, Statistics Agency, and we need everyone on board. And our strategy is to make them true partners. And here I want to highlight our recent work with the ADB. We organized a series of joint trainings for all these government bodies, and it was wonderful. It was not typical bureaucratic meeting. It was informal, and it was a live. I saw colleagues from different agencies actively discussing reforms, and they started to see the big picture. When a tax official or a lawyer understands the final goal of a reform, the implementation becomes much easier. So our strategy is strong political support from the top and deep engagement with the stakeholders at every level. And the Foreign Investors Council serves as a perfect platform to unite these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexey, for this very clear roadmap that defines some of the elements of this strategy for implementing the policy recommendations. Over to you, Christina.
Thanks, Rolando. I think Alexey made a perfect segue to introduce our next panelist, Aziz Gafurov, and basically he heads up the Secretariat of the Foreign Investors Council, and he basically has you have direct insights into what foreign investors need to bring their capital and the know-how to make investments in Uzbekistan. So from the foreign investors' perspective, Aziz, what does this roadmap provide for the foreign investors?
Thank you very much, Christina. For foreign investors, the roadmap provides value in three important ways. First, it offers strategic clarity on how Uzbekistan intends to develop its investment environment. For investors, having a long-term and forward-looking framework is essential. It reduces uncertainty and demonstrates a strong national commitment to structured reform. Simply having such a document is a major signal for all international partners. Second, the roadmap creates a common language for policy dialogue. It brings together issues such as legal predictability, regulatory coherence, SOE governance, competition, and responsible business conduct into one unified vision. This allows investors and government authorities to align expectations and coordinate efforts more effectively. Many of these priorities are also reflected in Uzbekistan Strategy 2030, including institutional strengthening, competitive markets, human capital, and sustainable growth. Third, the roadmap reinforces coordination platforms such as the Foreign Investors Council. Within the council, our members put forward systematic issues and initiatives, which are then channeled to the relevant ministries and to the national leadership. The roadmap helps connect these bottom-up initiatives with the country's long-term strategic direction. Overall, the roadmap provides investors with confidence that reforms are progressing in a predictable, coherent, and collaborative way, and that Uzbekistan is committed to building an investment environment aligned with international standards.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Aziz. Thank you, Aziz.
Thank you. I move now to Enrico, who represents ADB in our panel. Enrico, the reports make some recommendations for improving the fiscal risk management for PPPs in particular, and to improve the strategic planning in Uzbekistan. And ADB is already supporting the government in implementing some of these measures. Could you share some insights on the progress and the trajectory of the PPP program that ADB is leading, and how do you envision the future for the implementation? Over to you.
Thanks, Orlando, Christina, and again, I'm also very delighted to share the virtual stage, I would say, with good old friends from both OECD, ADB, FIC, and MIIT. Thanks for the question. Well, first of all, maybe I would like to highlight the fact that Uzbekistan's PPP program has really now moved into a more mature phase over the past few years. First, I think we have seen a clear shift from what used to be ad hoc PPPs to a much more strategic and structured program. Project selection is more disciplined, feasibility work is stronger, and projects are increasingly tied to sector strategy, especially energy, which, as you know, has been quite successful, but also health, transport, and water. Then going to one specific of your question is, one of the biggest steps forward really has been fiscal risk management. With ADB support and also other IFIs and IMF, the Ministry of Economy and Finance is putting in place tools to assess affordability, to track long-term liabilities, and evaluate contingent risks. This is really critical to make sure that the PPP programs grows sustainably, and not just in size, but also in quality. Then institutional capacity has definitely improved. We have a PPP unit, which is becoming much stronger in a role of, I will say, gatekeeper, and especially in coordinating with line ministries, which have an equal important role in the development of this PPP pipeline and in the management of the projects. So now we are seeing real results. In energy, as I mentioned earlier, now Uzbekistan, and I think our fellow Uzbek panelist here will definitely agree with me that it has positioned itself as a regional leader in renewable IPPs. In health and education, there's a first wave now, so PPP progressing. ADB and other IFIs are backing some of the pilots, which I really hope they can be scaled up, especially given the demographic challenge of a country that is adding about 1 million people every year. Is also in transport and municipal services. We have seen now very strong pipeline taking shape. So looking ahead, I think the program is moving now from volume to value. Fewer but better prepared projects with a clear risk allocation and a stronger public sector oversight. I also think the continued focus on fiscal risk management will be essential for maintaining the investor confidence and integrating PPPs into the broader public investment framework. So overall, I think the progress is tangible, and the foundations are now in place for a more predictable and fiscally responsible PPP program. As ADB will continue working closely with the government as this reform, as Aleksey said, move into implementation.
Thank you, Enrico, and thank you to all our panelists for these very valuable insights. So we can now go into a second round and look a little bit deeper into some of the reform drivers and how these recommendations have translated into some of the strategies that Uzbekistan is already implementing. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Rolando. So we'll circle back to Ana. So Ana, if I could invite you to the panel. You've had extensive experience leading global processes related to improvement of investment policy frameworks, such as the FDI qualities and the Future of Investment Treaties initiatives. Could you tell us more about the experience of other countries in designing and implementing investment policy reforms? And you talked about a lot of the different pieces, a lot going on. So how important are like coherent investment frameworks in your view? Thanks.
Okay, yeah, let me, I think that the intervention that we just hear about, particularly the Alexis and Aziz, like in a way, it's a very straightforward, because I think that the main component, and I will tell you a little about our experience, is exactly this political will, and I think that, and the coherence, and I think that both already mentioned this idea, and particularly Alexis mentioned this idea of joint kind of ministerial government agencies, and then the work that also you are doing ADB with them in terms of supporting that. And we have this task force that we hope that is, when we develop this review, we hope that this will stay, because I think that this is exactly the issue, how one policy implement other. The way that our experience with this framework, with the policy framework of investment and the equality, even when we create this framework, we create this framework with this kind of consultations among stakeholders, business, government, to exactly try to capture the good practices. And I think that the main result is that it's true that the improve, and this is something that I mentioned at the beginning, but I want to repeat again, that reforms to improve climate for investment cannot be in isolation. They need to be done in a coherent investment policy and these interministerial institutions. I think that we know that designing and then implementing reform is never easy. And there are not a simple model. I think that what we try to do is also this peer learning through the investment committee. For example, what we do sometimes is to organize this kind of compare different approach. For example, how Thailand reforms their licensing system, or how Indonesia improved the transparency, or how other OECD countries have strengthened their coordination between national and province level, that is, or regional level, that this is important. And I think that we recognize that countries are different, have different level of development, have different circumstances, but this peer learning is something that it helps, because there are some good practices that goes beyond the level of development or beyond the circumstances, and you can learn from each other. I mean, that this is something that is good. That I think that is the approach that we have in Uzbekistan, but then we have in other reviews, that is the internal coordination among different agencies, but also is kind of showing the Uzbekistan example, for example, and we have this committee meeting, and then others commenting, and then others involving in this kind of what Uzbekistan is doing and how others are doing, and then how to enrich this discussion. I think that this partnership with ADB has been very successful for what I have seen with Bangladesh, and I hope that we will continue working together, because it's also reduced duplication, gives some coherence. I think that is also at the international level, I think that is also important. And just to finish, I just want to say the same like Enrico said, we are happy to continue working with Uzbekistan in the implementation part, because again, one issue is to have good recommendations, and the other issue is implement these good recommendations. We know that the things sometimes are more complex, and we hope with this political will, with this kind of approach that we are having, we will help Uzbekistan not only to attract more investment, but investment that deliver long-lasting benefit for their economy, society, and the environment.
Thanks, Anna. I echo the, partnerships is definitely key. So it's a pleasure working with the OECD. It's back to you, Rolando.
Thank you, Christina. So moving back to Alexei, we have talked a bit about what have been the main reforms, the vision, and now when we talk about the factors and what are the drivers that can help the government drive these reforms, how do you see these factors? What is needed? And if I may, I will combine a little bit with one of the questions on the chat, where the question is on, do we have in Uzbekistan the appropriate training institutions to attract the kind of FDI that we wish to attract, for example, on green or digital technologies? So if you could maybe talk a little bit about those factors and how do you see those key factors to.
One is the personal leadership of our president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. And I remember the plenary session of the Foreign Investors Council clearly. And the president didn't just attend. He actively supported the initiatives and developed when the roadmap initiatives is presented. And for the whole government, that was a clear signal. It means this roadmap is priority. Another factor is we needed to translate the political will into action, and that brings me to the second factor, presidential decree number 226. And this document is vital. It took the recommendation from the roadmap and turned them into binding instructions. It consolidated our journey. It assigned specific responsibilities government agency. And finally, the third factor is the shared responsibility. We are seeing a real shift. Just recently, we held an interim session with investors to review our progress. And what made me happy was seeing representatives from all government bodies, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, Ministry of Energy, and others reporting on their progress. And they understand the value of these reforms. They understand that the recommendations identified by the OECD and ADB experts are essential for our development. And I'm confident that with this foundation, the realization of the roadmap will create a solid basis for the future development of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. So leadership, willingness, and responsibility. So three factors that we have observed throughout the process, and I think it's been exceptional in the case of Uzbekistan. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Rolando. We'll just invite Aziz back to the panel. Perhaps we could really zone in, Aziz, on what specific reforms that have been identified in the roadmap.
Thank you, Christina. From the perspective of foreign investors, two areas of the roadmap stand out as particularly important. First is the legal predictability and the coherence of the regulatory framework. Investors highlights the importance of consistent implementation, transparency in the rule-making process, and the reduced reliance on secondary regulations. Strengthening predictability helps investors plan long-term projects with more confidence. The second is the improvement of SOE corporate governance and the promotion of competitive neutrality. Clear governance standards, separation of commercial and regulatory functions, and greater transparency in SOE operations are essential for building a fair and competitive market environment. These steps help reduce market distortions and attract higher quality, responsible investment. Complementing these priorities, responsible business conduct and ESG alignment are also gaining attention among investors. Uzbekistan is already addressing these topics through thematic working groups under the Foreign Investors Council and through new interagency groups created after this recent session chaired by the president. This mechanism helped ensure that investors' feedback is directly incorporated into policy design and implementation. Together, these reforms align with the vision outlined in Strategy 2030 and support Uzbekistan's ambition to build a predictable, competitive, and sustainable investment environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Aziz.
Eh,
I'll hand the floor back to you, Rolando.
Thank you. And the final question for Enrico, going back to some of ADB's work. ADB has done some work related to the state-owned enterprises recommendations, and the report makes some very specific recommendations in this area. Could you tell us a bit more about ADB's work on the reform of state-owned banks, for example, and how is ADB helping to limit, for example, directed lending practices towards our more basket-based criteria? Over to you.
Thanks, Orlando, for the question. And actually, it leads perfectly from what Aziz was saying about the level playing field. So I think it's a good segue. So yes, on state-owned banks, I think ADB's support is really focused on helping them operate like more modern, commercially driven institution. We have been working with the authorities to really clarify ownership policies, strengthen the boards, improve the governance, and we are supporting key functions, right? Like risk management, the IFRS reporting, and the credit governance, the decision making in the credit, right? So this is really targeted to change behavior, to change that, or at least reduce that political interference in the decision making of credits, which ultimately will end up hopefully strengthening the financial sustainability of this institution. So as you rightly pointed out, Rolando, a part of the agenda is really to reduce the directed lending. We have existing relationship with some of the state banks like Hawk Bank or the Business Development Bank, where we're really helping rolling out stronger credit appraisal systems. And this will hopefully also bring about more transparent pricing and a clear separation between what is a policy lending and what is a commercial operation. So the idea is really to gradually lower the preferential lending and opening up the space for private banks to compete on equal terms, and really something that is crucial for improving the investment climate. Now, there's also a set of banks that are even slotted for privatization, and ADB is engaging with some of them on pre-privatization work, which goes a little bit even deeper with formal due diligences, the preparation of restructuring plan, and the preparation of roadmaps for the development to get to that stage of being partially fully privatized. So the idea is really, again, work on demonopolize from public hands this financial sector and leading to a more competitive and healthier system overall.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Enrico. And with that, we have finalized our panel. If I may, we can move now to the Q&A questions. So please feel free to write your questions on the chat. We have already a few. And I would like to maybe follow up with Enrico on that final point related to the how does Uzbekistan compare to the other countries in the region? You work with several Central Asian governments. And how would you compare the strategy and the current situation in Uzbekistan on investment to the other members of that region?
Well, I hope I don't get into trouble comparing countries, but in general, definitely the momentum is really high. There has been a strong will since the beginning of this process, since His Excellency President Mirziyoyev came into the presidency. There's been a pace that has been quite remarkable and caught the eye of a lot of investors. There's also been, I will say, an attempt to try. There has been things that possibly would have been a bit unthinkable at the beginning of the process, because it would have, reforms doesn't come easy. So it has been quite a bit of engaging in areas where you would have, of course, touched some interests that were there before, and it was not afraid. I'm not saying it's not happening in the other country, but the pace in which have been happening in Uzbekistan has been quite remarkable. And that's what kind of differentiates a little bit that political willingness. I think there are other Central Asian countries that are also very willing to reform. The pace that Uzbekistan has undertaken, the willingness and their, I will say, I'm going to say something that maybe it's a bit unusual, but has been a race. It's been a race between different government agency, different individuals, given and in general, people that say, "I want to be first there. I want to get there. I want to reform. I want this to happen." So there's been really everybody was going in was moving the same direction toward the same goal, and that was really healthy because you saw that everybody was recognizing and they still recognize that the reforms are beneficial. And I was really happy to hear before by Alexei that now the training that has been delivered by ADB has really had the same feeling during this training where everybody at the table, whatever different department, whether it was lawyers, whether it was other people involved in the reform process, they all understand the end goal now. And they all want to be there and they want to get there. And really, all the questioning was, how do I get there first, probably?
Yeah, so the momentum has been really unique and the leadership, as it was mentioned also by Alexei. Anna, would you like to add something?
Yes, maybe to complement a little what Enrico is saying in terms of the political economy, I think that this is true. The political will is, and I mentioned at the beginning, but I think that this is a combination. The political economy is that to have the political moment and the economic needs, I would say. And in a way, I think that the way that Uzbekistan is doing, in a way, is not only the political will, but also this stakeholder consultation, the buy-in, interagencies. I think that also this facilitates the way that we approach this investment policy review is exactly with this kind of task force with the different agencies. And I think that this is something that Alexis mentioned, and I think that this is super important for the political economic, because you need the buy-in not only of one minister, but you need the buy-in of different agencies and also stakeholder consultation, that communities, business, they know what you are planning, and this is a credible and long-term one. In terms of the WTO accession, the WTO is about trade and it has some component of investment in the services part, but I would say that means that it's not straightforward related with this kind of review, but this kind of review, and when you improve institutions, transparency, there are many elements in the WTO accession process that are related with some aspect of the work that Uzbekistan is doing. That means that in that way, it's not directly related, because the process of accession of the WTO is more related with goods and services, and not so much with investment. But I think that this effort, without doubt, will have an important positive impact in the WTO accession of Uzbekistan.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks. We just got a new question in, and basically, going to the point about, higher quality and sustainability aligned FDI. And the question is from Carlino Martins. What are the key elements of Uzbekistan's sustainable investment roadmap can Asian economies adopt in terms of attracting higher quality and sustainability aligned FDI? Is this something that you want to come in on, Anna and Faris, to start with? Faris?
Yes, go ahead.
I can respond to this one as it relates to my other hat here as overseeing the work on FDI qualities in Anna's investment division. I think that we have four priorities or four axes in terms of quality FDI that we actually kind of discussed also here. The first one is being, of course, the policy coherence and institutional coordination. When we talk about quality investment, when we talk about digital, green, when we talk about skills, it's obvious that we cannot do strategies in silos, and we cannot implement reforms in silos. So this is one recommendation that we also have to Uzbekistan if you want to go beyond just the narrower core investment climate policies. The second priority is about getting the regulations, both domestic and international, right. When we talk again about digital FDI, there is a whole range of very important regulation related to, for instance, data, cross-border data flows, data centers, security related to also the sharing of this data, etc., that are very important for foreign investors. So you would also need to get these regulations right if your objective is to attract FDI in the digital economy, for instance. International trade and investment agreements can also play a role, although here it's not necessarily always very clear if the impact that is behind them. But we see more and more provisions related to sustainability in these agreements, including now in areas like digital, but also on gender or on green aspect or training. The third priority relates to technical and financial support. And here, basically, what we mentioned about tax incentives, for instance, to have them more targeted to these quality objectives you want to achieve from attracting FDI. And just to mention on the political economy, here, obviously, it's a very good example, tax incentives, because you talk to Ministry of Finance, they tell you no. You talk to Ministry of Investment, they tell you yes, please. And then basically you definitely need here to have coherent vision to achieve something that everyone agrees on. And then the last key priorities that all Asian countries could benefit from is about, of course, investment promotion and facilitation. You need also that your investment promotion agency is able, in terms of the activities, skills, mandate they have at hand, to actually attract and to design also aftercare services that are targeted to this quality FDI aspect. We now talk a lot about supply chain resilience and FDI SME linkages. This is something that investment promotion agencies must play a role in, and it would be the fourth priority that we can have under this question. Sorry for taking a bit long, but you can find all of this in our FDI qualities framework if there is interest.
Thanks a lot, Faris. That's a very good summary of some of the main recommendations. And we are running out of time, so I think we might just have time for one final question. It's related to what you just mentioned about the externalities of FDI and, for example, its impact on employment, which is an important dimension of quality FDI. What would be your take from the experience of Uzbekistan in terms of how FDI can promote employment creation, better quality employment? Do you see some lessons learned in there, and perhaps something that is a good takeaway for other countries in the region?
Well, we didn't, I don't know if the question is addressed to me. We didn't go deep into the quality aspect in this view, so it would be hard to respond on the spot to this. But Uzbekistan, of course, the type of FDI that the country receives is more capital intensive, let's say. So obviously, in terms of what we call the number of jobs created per amount or per dollar of foreign investment, it may be lower than in other countries that rely more on manufacturing. That being said, when we see the huge amount of investment going into the green transition and now maybe in the digital transition, this, especially the digital transition, can be quite labor and skill intensive. And here there was a question on the chat about training. I think that MIIT, but also the rest of the government, they really need to already think today on what are the skills that foreign investors that are interested in the digital sector of Uzbekistan need to be able to expand, invest, and go into kind of like higher value added activities. This is something that you need to think of today so that you can have so you don't miss the opportunities created by this digital transformation. So yeah, you can find this in this chapter, but I think that this deserves almost some sort of follow-up work to go more into this quality aspect that we touched upon in terms of green and digital, but not much in terms of labor and skills.
Well, many thanks to everyone. I mean, to all our speakers and the participants for joining today's Asian Impact webinar. It was a really rich discussion, and we hope the discussion provided useful insights on how sustainable investment policy can drive development impact.
And before we close today's webinar, we want to invite you to our next Asian Impact webinar, which will be on unlocking MSME potential amid global trade uncertainty, and will take place on the 11th of December at 2 p.m. Manila time via Zoom. So please do check our Asian Impact webinar and our Chief Economist webpage for more updates. Thank you, everyone, and see you again.